It started with a phone call from a convincing pitchman.
The gentleman said that we had won $1 million sweepstake.
But before Ed and Laura Claudius could collect their big Canadian lottery prize, they were told they'd have to pay taxes due on the $1 million. And they did just as they were told. Sent more than $80,000, money they spent years saving, money they will never see again. The Claudius' money probably ended up here in Montreal. It's the Canadian city where hundreds of cons call home. Investigators say these telemarketers operate right downtown. Constable Sylvain Leroux of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police works downtown too. He's part of the Canadian law enforcement agency that's on the front lines fighting fraudulent phone scams. We rode along with Leroux on a tour of Montreal. Every day he battles phone fraud in Quebec, but it's not easy. Deceptive telemarketers can be anywhere, like inside this ordinary-looking skyscraper, blending in right along a major avenue in Montreal, or here in this building in an alley just off another busy street. The RCMP busted a boiler room here earlier this year.
When you look at this, you know, they're all high-rises and all that. There's thousands of offices just in this square block.
All of them downtown, all wired for telephones and computers. Everything fraudulent telemarketers need to rip off unsuspecting Americans. But U.S. and Canadian investigators are trying to stop that. They work side by side with Leroux at COLT, the center of operations linked to telemarketing fraud. Its mission? Dismantle deceptive telemarketing rings like the one that ripped off Ed and Laura Claudius of Williamsport. We showed our interview to Leroux.
Sad, eh? It is really sad. It's always that same story. It's always that same story about that person who's, you know, a smooth talker.
And the victims? Almost always like the Claudiuses.
They like to go after these elderly people because they know that these people come from a generation where, you know, people were trusting people.
They're also from a generation that's more likely to play sweepstakes. It gives them something to do to pass time, but what looks like an innocent game can quickly become a ticket to financial disaster.
If you fill out one of those coupons, you just open the door to getting called.
Your name will go on a sucker list. That's what the bad guys call people who've already been scammed but don't even know it. And if you're on a sucker list from a fraud in Canada, it's tougher for cops in the States.
If you have the bad guys in Montreal or in Canada and the victims in the U.S., we have a trans-border crime. So we're touching two different jurisdictions, two different ways of doing things. So it makes everything a little more complicated.
But COLT is making a difference. 25 people arrested last year during this raid in Quebec, and 15 more while 28 News was in Montreal.
One of the bad guys that we arrested, one day I asked him, I says, well, now that you've been caught, are you going to stop doing what you were doing? And his answer, and I'm quoting him, he says, well, as long as there are going to be suckers there to send me the money, I'll be going at it.